what we see on the news, these protests that are happening all over college campuses in the United States, it seems like it would have maybe nothing to do with traveling salesman Eddie Jacobson, but it does. Eddie was born in New York City and moved when he was, I think, 14 or a little younger to Kansas City. And there he met a friend named Harry. They were sort of the same age, and so they were friends growing up, and then actually got called up to go serve in World War I in the same battalion. So they served in World War I together. And then after the war, Harry and Eddie weren't sure what to do, and so they opened a gentleman clothing store, haberdashery, and worked that, and it didn't go amazingly. Eddie ended up having to deal with the brunt of that business, and he became a traveling salesman for a company. Harry, on the other hand, ran for the Jackson County judge and then won a Senate seat, and then was handpicked by FDR to be his vice president. And when Roosevelt died in office, Harry Truman became the president. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't still friends with Eddie Jacobson. In fact, Eddie being a traveling salesman meant that he could stop in and see the White House. This is back when you could go and visit your friend in the White House. Things are a lot tighter now, I'm guessing. One of the things that Eddie talked to Harry about were the Jews in Europe. He had some first-hand knowledge of how the Jews were being treated all over Europe. And while it seemed like the United States was ignorant and even turning Jewish people away, Eddie had the president's ear and was telling him about what was going on, so that the U.S. was actively then involved in helping Jewish people resettle and to concentrate the war effort in that way. And it was Eddie Jacobson, a Jewish man, who had the ear of the President of the United States, Harry Truman, who, after the War of 1948, and they declared independence in 1948, it was because of Eddie Jacobson that 11 minutes after that was declared, the United States was the first nation to recognize Israel as a country on May 14th, 1948. Harry Truman said this, quote, "Hitler had been murdering Jews right and left. I saw it, and I dream about it even to this day. The Jews needed some place where they could go. It is my attitude that the American government couldn't stand idly by while the victims of Hitler's madness are not allowed to build new lives." And again, this was largely because of Eddie Jacobson. Now, we don't always think about presidents and their friends, but presidents have friends like anybody does. Close friends that they can talk to, people that they can confide in. And obviously they have to be careful about the things that they talk about, but we should not think of presidents and people in leadership as people that don't have close friends. They may have the same number of friends that you do. And again, it's strange for us to think about that, but we all have friends. Now think about this. When you're little, your whole world revolves around your family, especially your parents at first, and then maybe siblings and aunts and grandmas and uncles and grandpas and everybody kind of in the mix. But as you get older and you go to school and you're interacting with people in the neighborhood, your attention goes more to friends. When you're growing up, it's sort of a mixture of family and friends, but I remember this transition when I was in high school of spending a lot more time with my friends, especially when I got my license, than I did with my family. And that's a natural just way of life. Now, obviously, then you say, well, but then you get married and you go right back to family. Yes, but who is your spouse? But someone that you're not blood related to, your best friend, right? So even then, your friend becomes your family, and you meld the two, and you have children that you grow up, that you raise, and again, your orientation is toward family. But even then, I think we underestimate the effect that friends have on our lives. Thomas Aquinas said, "There is nothing on this earth more to be prized than true friendship." And whenever people use words like nothing more, we understand that there are probably more important things to treasure than friendship. However, it's a true statement that friendship is important. And I say this because we're living in a society that is becoming increasingly lonely. Now, isn't it strange that we have more ways to connect with people, more access to more people, and yet people are saying, I am lonelier than ever? Part of the problem is that we are retraining ourselves how to interact with other people. I mentioned this on Thursday night, but it's a lot easier to get online and chirp at somebody who in Bangladesh, somebody that you'll never meet, than it is to sit down with someone that you know. And the more people that you know in this community and the more friends that you have, the flesh and blood friends that you have, the better off you're going to be because they hold you to a certain standard that online friends don't. And I think one of the problems with social media, when you go on, some of you aren't on Facebook and some of you are, but what's the word they use for the people that you have connections with? They don't say connections, they say friends. These are your friends. You know that I have a lot of Facebook friends that aren't my friends at all? I barely know them. I mean, it's actually a good thing that I'm friends with them on Facebook because I'd forget what they look like. Those aren't friends, but that's what kind of we're being retrained to think about that. But I want to challenge you to really invest in real flesh and blood friendships. That's not to say you can't have friends that live far away. One of my good friends is Jeff Shergalis. We pray together on Thursdays. I'm praying for him in his ministry. I pray for him when he's discouraged. He prays for me when I'm discouraged. That's good. I'm looking forward to seeing him in June when they're back in the States. But it's important for you to have friends and to be a friend. The Bible has much to say about friendship. It talks about the importance of finding the right friends. Proverbs 27, verse 9, ointment and perfume rejoice the heart. So doth the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. Proverbs 17:17, Seth read it this morning, a friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. There's also warnings about the danger of finding the wrong kind of friends. Proverbs 22, verses 24 and 25, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. In 2 Corinthians 6:14, be not unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion hath light with darkness? Let me quantify and just say I think it's good to have unsaved friends, but not the kind of close friends that are actually influencing you for the wrong. I think your best friends ought to be people that you are like-minded with, and hopefully for you as a Christian, at your core is Christian values, is Christ in your life. It's really hard to find really good friends that don't have that mindset, that aren't saved. Again, I have friends that are unsaved. I think it's important for you to have friends that are unsaved. However, I'm just saying there's that yoking part that talks about. And then there's also 1 Corinthians 15:33, be not deceived, evil communications corrupt good manners. The people that you converse with are going to influence you, so it's good for you to choose the right friends. Teenagers, it's important for you to choose the right friends. Not just when you're in high school, but when you go into college as well. You go on campus and it's a white canvas. You can be whoever you want to be, and the kind of people that you find as your friends are going to help you shape the new kind of person that you might be. So it's important for you to find the right kinds of friends. When your parents say, I don't like that friend, or I don't think you should hang out with that person, they're seeing things that you won't see. They're not saying don't have friends. They're just maybe saying don't have that friend. And parents, it's up to you then to help your kids find good friends. So, a little admonition there. Friends can pull us back from the brink, or they can push us over the edge. And so it's important to have the right kind of friends. And one example of friendship in the Bible that I think is one of my favorites, I'm trying to think of friends in the Bible that are stronger friends, more exemplified than Jonathan and David. The Bible spends a lot of real estate talking about the friendship of Jonathan and David. We read here in chapter 20. We saw this already in chapter 18, verses 1 through 4. It said that after Saul was talking with David, the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. It said in verse 3 that Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. We looked at how he gave him his robe and garments and sword and bow and girdle. In chapter 19, we read about how Saul was trying to kill David, and David goes to Jonathan, and Jonathan goes and intercedes on behalf of David. We read that already in chapter 19 when we talked about intercession. Jonathan does well for David, but even after this, remember in chapter 19, right after Saul says, "Oh, don't worry, I won't kill you," David has another victory. Saul has another episode where he tries to actively kill David, and the rest of chapter 19 is him trying to kill David, again, first personally, then sending servants to kill him, and waiting outside his house, and then trying to capture him while he's with Samuel. So now who does David have? He can't go home. He can't go to see Samuel, his mentor, his pastor. Who do you have when you feel like you can't talk to your spouse? You can't talk to your pastor, and I hope that you can. I hope you feel like you can, that I'm your friend. But who do you go to? It's good to have friends. And so David goes to Jonathan. And I really feel like, besides perhaps his mom and dad, Jonathan is the only person that David can talk to. We see very little interaction between David and Jesse, but we see lots between Jonathan and David. And here in chapter 20, he pleads for help, and Jonathan responds. In verse 1, David fled from Naioth and Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, "What have I done? What is mine iniquity? And what is my sin before thy father that he seeketh my life?" Now this is news to Jonathan because Saul he knows that he can't trust Jonathan, and so he's been keeping all of this a secret from Jonathan. Jonathan doesn't know and said in verse 2, he said unto him, "God forbid, thou shalt not die. Behold, my father will do nothing, either great or small, but that he will show it me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. You're wrong. Hey, David, you're a little paranoid now, I understand you're scared, but, Dad, he has these episodes. You're fine." And David says, "No, you don't understand, Jonathan. This has been kept from you. I need your help. This isn't paranoia. This is actual." Verse 3, David sware moreover and said, "Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he saith, Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death." David comes and says, "Jonathan, you have to help me. I don't know how to convince you that I'm in real trouble, and it's your dad. You can't go to your dad and ask him for help. It has to be you, and I need your help." He's putting himself fully in Jonathan's hands. And so we see an example here of friendship and some principles. First of all, we see that friendship is a refuge. That's what part of being a friend is, that you're a refuge for those who call you their friends. Look at verse 4. Then said Jonathan unto David, "Whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee." Whatever you want. Here's a blank check. David said unto Jonathan, "Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field unto the third day at even. If thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me that he might run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. If he say thus, it is well, thy servant shall have peace. But if he be very wroth, then be sure that evil is determined by him." David says, here's what I want from you, Jonathan. I'm going to go hide in the field. I'm supposed to be at this monthly feast, the new moon feast, and I'm supposed to sit at Saul's table. He has a place for me as one of his generals. I'm not supposed to miss. That's going to be a very offensive thing, but I can't go. And Jonathan, I want you to go. And if your father asks, "Hey, where's David?" tell him he had to run to Bethlehem. He had something else that he had to do. And if your father says, "Okay," then I'm wrong. He's not trying to kill me. But if he gets really angry, then you know that I'm in real trouble and I need your help. But I need you to go and just confirm this and see how bad it really is. So they're using this as sort of a test, sort of a fleece. The level of anger of Saul will determine just how angry Saul is and how much he wants to kill David. And so Jonathan agrees. And look at verse number 18. Then Jonathan said to David, "Tomorrow is the new moon. Thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty." And we're going to notice that you're gone. "And when thou hast stayed 3 days, then thou shalt go down quickly and come to the place where thou didst hide thyself when the business was in hand, and shalt remain by the stone Ezel. And I will shoot 3 arrows on the side thereof, as though I shot at a mark." I'm going to go pretend to be an archer, shooting at these things, and I will shoot And behold, I will send a lad, saying, go, find out the arrows. If I expressly say unto the lad, behold, the arrows are on this side of thee, take them, then come thou, for there is peace to thee, and no hurt, as the Lord liveth. And of course, Jonathan thinks this is what's going to happen. I'm going to shoot these arrows, and I'm going to tell the boy, actually, you went too far. Come back this way. And it's a way of code. The code is for David, come on. You can come back. It's fine. But in verse 22, if I say thus unto the young man, behold, the arrows are beyond thee, then David, go thy way, for the Lord hath sent thee away. And as touching the matter which thou and I have spoken of, behold, the Lord be between thee and me forever. So Jonathan, he concocts this scheme, I guess, in a way where David's going to hide, and Jonathan's the only one who knows he's there. And he can't tell anybody. He can't even tell this boy that's with him in case the boy tells Saul. So he says, we're going to have this elaborate scheme where I'll shoot these arrows, and depending on what I tell the boy, either, hey, no, the arrows are on this side, then that means come on. Or, oh, the arrows are beyond thee, that means, David, this is beyond anything that I can do. It's too far. Now, the boy's not going to understand that, but David, you will. And I can give you a message while you're hiding. Because one of Jonathan's biggest priorities at this point is just to make sure that David is safe. A friendship is a refuge. His first priority is to go and intercede for him. We need friends as a refuge because we don't open up to just anybody. Now, have you met people that you say, how are you doing? And you find out their life story? They were born in a little town in Iowa in 1972, and they've been in the hospital this many times, and this is the medicines that they take. And some of you know who I'm talking about. There's a story that you know all about them, but that's not the way most people are. Most people are not going to tell you everything because they're just kind of a closed book. Now, to strangers, so we have different levels of how we interact with people, right? To strangers, we'll act civil. It's good just to be polite, nice, just enough to not be threatening. To our acquaintances, we often wear masks. People we see on a regular basis, we have a mask. Hey, how's it going? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing fake about that. We definitely want those people to see certain things. Again, that's one of the dangers of social media. You find out that somebody's just devastated, but on social media, all they ever post is life is great and smiling, and you never see them frown. And honestly, it would be weird to have a picture of someone frowning, like, I'm not having a good day. You don't see that on social media, but you definitely do when you're friends with them in real life. But we wear masks for people. We have a lot of acquaintances, a lot of people we see, and even maybe in church, I'm like, I'm going to church, I got to put my mask on. Not my COVID mask, but like my happy face, right? Like a happy boy. I'm glad to be here, even if I'm not. Because you don't really want to burden other people. And maybe you feel like even if you did tell them, they'd be like Bildad or Eliphaz. Well, the problem is you're not right with God. So we just kind of put a mask on. Then you have arm-length friends. People that you see on a regular basis, and they kind of know the real you, like your coworkers, or maybe the same gas station attendant or waitress or whatever, person that you see on a regular basis, but they're not like, you don't let them in, but they just know a lot about you because they spend enough time with you. They can speak on your behalf. They know kind of your habits. They've probably seen a few bad days, but they're not invested in your life. If they ask, hey, is everything all right? It usually has to do with their life. Like, I need you to not be like that anymore so that I can have a good day, right? You know what I'm talking about. Arm-length friends. Vanessa Edwards wrote an article just this year, April 19th, and said this: according to research, the average person has 3 to 5 very close friends, 10 to 15 people in their circle, and 100 to 150 acquaintances in their social network. Now, of course, that's going to vary depending on the size of place you live and how much you get out of your house. But it's true that when I'm talking about friends, that's usually a pretty small number. We have our very close friends, the ones that you let in because you want to let them in. And I think that's good. I think it's good to be able to open up to other people. Vulnerability is hard, but that is where real growth and help can happen. David went to Jonathan because he was the only one who understood what he was going through, who had seen him in battle, who had seen him in his highs and lows. And David knew that I can find a refuge in Jonathan. George Washington said, "Be courteous to all, but intimate with few, and let those few be well tried before you give them your confidence." So here's the thing. You say, you're sitting there and you're like, I don't have a lot of really close friends. Well, maybe it's because you haven't tried them. You haven't let yourself even take those first steps of friendship. You're not even, everything stays surface level. You always have your mask on with everybody. Isn't it a relief to be able to take your mask off for somebody? Isn't it good to be able to have somebody that you can talk to and you can say, hey, I know that usually when you ask how are you doing, I say fine, but I'm not actually that fine. And it's amazing how I was talking with a friend this week, and I was just admitting some of my struggles, and he said, you too? And that's one of the things about friendship. We think that we're all alone, and then we have a friend who's going through the same kind of things, and maybe even worse than we are, and we say, okay. But you have to be able to have some vulnerability to even have that relationship to begin with. Friends, I think, Nathaniel Hawthorne said, our most intimate friend is not he to whom we show the worst, but the best of our nature. Now, sometimes if they're there around, they see the worst of it too. I've been thinking about this a lot over the years. What is a friend? Because I've had friends in the past, and those friendships have broken up. And part of the reason those friendships have broken up is that they have changed. Now, sometimes we change, and it just happens gradually, right? You move away from Missouri, and those friends, Christy, you try to maintain those friendships, but isn't it a little harder? You have less in common. You move from wherever not many of us are from here. Most of us moved here from somewhere else, and it's hard to maintain those friends, those people. You try to be friends with people in high school and college, but it's just not easy because you just don't. And that's okay. Those things happen. You don't have to have 50 best friends. Your best friend from elementary school doesn't have to be your best friend now. They can move into that acquaintance. But sometimes friendships break apart because a person really wants to change and make really horrible decisions, and a friend will say, that's not you. See, I think a friend is someone who holds you to your own standards, that knows you well enough to say, hey, what's going on? Not, I'm holding you to my standard. No, why can't you be like me? But no, I know you, and this isn't you. This isn't the way you normally are. There's something not right here. And helping our friends see the way things really are. Now, I'm speaking in terms of negative because that's the context of our passage here. David's in trouble, and he really needs a friend. And you're in trouble sometimes, and you need a friend as well. And it's important for us to recognize that need and to be the kind of friend who wants to go meet that need. Now, you say, well, how are you supposed to find those friends that you can be a refuge in? I think the key is to be one. He that will have friends must show himself friendly. You have to be able to, people have to, first of all, know that you are trustworthy. Are you trustworthy enough to keep secrets? Even the secrets that you never said, I promise. You're just the kind of friend that they know if I tell this person, it'll never get to anybody else. Are you the kind of trustworthy friend that people can be vulnerable with you about? Do you withhold negative facts or opinions from others because you don't want them to think less of your friend? You want them to think the best? So there are things that I know about people, and it might be even kind of fun to go talk to somebody else about, right? But I don't want that other person to think badly of them. It was a bad moment. This isn't really them. This isn't a good representation of who they are. And sometimes, you have these exposés, I know, I'm a friend of this person. I know the real them. Well, a good friend wouldn't bring that out, even if it is true. I'm not saying we cover for our friends, but I'm also saying that we kind of cover for our friends. Your friends are the ones that you can be a refuge in, and they can have a refuge in you. When someone bears their soul to you, do you respond in empathy or indifference? Someone says, hey, I'm having a hard time, and you say, it'll be fine. Maybe your friend needs more than just kind of a casual, like it doesn't matter to me. One of the reasons I think that we have such a growing loneliness is that people don't feel like anybody else cares about them. And you'll be amazed how much just a little showing to somebody that I care about you, even if they're not your friend, they're just an acquaintance, they're just somebody. Like I always try to look at the name tag of somebody and just call them by their name because it's just one little act of kindness. But then I also have friends that I just check in on my phone. Hey, how is everything going for you? Pastors that I usually text on a Sunday morning. Hey, preach, brother. Have a good day in the Lord's house. And it's just a little bit of like, I care about you. I want you to thrive. I want you to do well. That's what friendship is. Do you have that? If someone calls you and someone wants to talk, do you have time for them? Or is it just kind of, I've got my own thing going on? I understand. We're all living very busy lives, but friendships take cultivation, just like anything else. Your gardens, cars, house, it all takes maintenance. Friendships too. What have you done to prove your care for them? Friendship is not something that you have, it's something that you show. And it's important for you to think about it in those terms as well. David knew that he could go to Jonathan. Why? Because of his commitment. And that's the second principle that we see here. Friendship is a refuge, but friendship is also a commitment. Look at chapter 20, verse 8, where it says, Therefore thou shalt deal kindly with thy servant, for thou hast brought thy servant into a covenant of the Lord with thee. Notwithstanding, if there be in me any iniquity, slay me thyself. For why shouldest thou bring me to thy father? David says, I'm coming to you because you made a promise to me. You made a commitment to me. You said that we are friends. You made an oath before the Lord. Jonathan, if you find that I've done anything wrong, if your father says that I've done something illegal and I deserve to die, Jonathan, you come and kill me yourself. I trust you. But don't turn me into your dad. Don't turn me in where I can be killed by him. Verse 9, Jonathan said, Far be it from me, for if I knew certainly the evil were determined by my father to come upon thee, then would not I tell it thee? Then said David to Jonathan, Who shall tell me? Or what if thy father answer thee roughly? Jonathan said unto David, Come, let us go out into the field. And they went out, both of them, into the field. Now he's about to explain the whole process of the arrows and everything. But first, verse 12, Jonathan said unto David, O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father about tomorrow, any time, or if the third day, and behold, if there be good toward David, and I then send not unto thee, and show it thee, the Lord do so, and much more to Jonathan. But if it please my father to do thee evil, then I will show it thee, and send thee away, that thou mayest go in peace, and the Lord be with thee, as he hath been with my father. And thou shalt not only, while I yet live, show me the kindness of the Lord, that I die not, but also thou shalt not cut off thy kindness from my house forever. No, not when the Lord hath cut off the enemies of David, every one from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, Let the Lord even require it at the hand of David's enemies. And Jonathan caused David to swear again, because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Jonathan says, David, you're nervous, you're worried, but I'm making a promise, a solemn promise to you that I'll find out what my dad's up to, and I will come and tell you. And if I don't, may the Lord strike me down. But David, I also want a promise from you that when you become the king and you're on the throne, that you won't kill me and my family as well. Now, you might say, well, that should have been obvious, but it was just something that Jonathan, it was on his mind. He needed to know that that was off the table completely. Commitment is always a risk because what ifs always abound. And this is one thing that's interesting when young people are looking for someone that they can marry and spend the rest of their life with. There's always this question of what if the person X? And it's a hard thing to tell them, yeah, that's a valid concern because you don't know. You can't you want to be as careful, young people, as you can to find the right kind of spouse for you. But there are so many things that you don't know and you can't know, and yet you still have to make a choice. You still have to put yourself out there. You can't know everything about this person and what they would do in this situation and how life is going to look like 20 years down the road. You can't know any of that. Maybe if you did, you wouldn't have any relationships at all because people are going to hurt you. But you have to take that first step of commitment. And nothing good ever comes without something hard in its place. It's a matter, honestly, of faith. You came to Christ. How did you know that he would take away all your sins? How did you know that he was going to give you the Holy Spirit to live within you? How did you know that he was going to give you joy and peace, gifts from the Holy Spirit? You didn't, except by faith. He said, and we tell people, you have to believe in Jesus Christ, that he died on the cross for you. That's entering into a relationship by faith. The same thing with friendships, the same thing with marriage. Any kind of relationship is a trust relationship. I drop my car off at the mechanics, and Whitey says, I'll have it done. I'm trusting that it's going to be done and that he's going to do it for a reasonable price, and haven't been disappointed yet, right? So we understand that there is that aspect of, I don't know everything that's going to happen, but I still go into this relationship. We can't live our lives with fear that everyone will betray us or disappoint us. You have to settle on someone and say, I trust that you will be good for me and that I want to be good for you. Friendship is a commitment. Friendship is a commitment to say, I will care for you no matter what. We humans are not able to love unconditionally. Everything has a condition. It's true. And even the people that you think the most of, I'll bet there's a situation it would be really hard for you to say, I still love this person or I still care about this person, and you've been tested. But the matter of friendship is going into it with saying, I intend for it to be a pretty big thing, if there's anything at all that would break up our friendship. And now for Christians, when we forgive and love, understand what we've been forgiven of, it's a lot easier to maintain those friendships, because you're going to have your friends sin against you, and you have to have an open enough relationship where you can go and say, hey, I messed up, or hey, you messed up. And you have to have the kind of friends who can say, you're right, I shouldn't have done that. Or you need to be the kind of friend that says, yeah, I'm glad you called me on that, because we would have lost this friendship. I can't tell you the number of friends that I've been able to maintain just because I've heard them out. Now, again, I've said this before. I don't like being rebuked. I don't like being criticized. I don't think anybody does. But isn't it true that, have you had times in your life when someone has criticized you or brought you to task, rebuked you, and you were grateful for it? You can take it if it's from a position of love and care. Some guy approaches me in Walmart parking lot and says, hey, you, da-da-da-da. I can just brush that off, right? But if a friend comes and says, hey, Josh, I'm seeing some things in your life that are just, again, not like you, that aren't right. I better take that, and I'll be more likely to take that from someone who cares about me. Hey, they're not saying this because they're angry, because they want to have they want to flex on me. But they're saying this because they care about me, and they see some real defects that they don't want for me, and they know that I wouldn't want for me if I was in the right frame of mind. That's what friendship is, to be able to say, hey, I want the best for you, and you want the best for me, and there's a commitment there. There's a commitment. Proverbs 27:17 says, iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. Now, let me ask you, for any of you who have sharpened any kind of knife or sword or anything like that, you just take that whetting stone, you just do it once, right? You just go zip, and that's sharp, right? It takes time. Sometimes a lot of time. Sometimes it's a constant. There's a lot of time that's taken to get that thing where it should be. And that's when you can't have casual friends. Every once in a while, they take a swipe, right? That's not going to be better for either one of you. It has to be over time. This is true, again, even if it means that they will criticize you. Proverbs 27, verses 5 and 6 say, open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. I guess I'd rather have friends who will tell me the way it really is in love than enemies who will tell me I'm the greatest person ever but hate me. Because they might be telling me things that are huge blind spots to me that are going to destroy me ultimately. And I'm glad I have a few friends who will say, this is not what you want. I'm glad for that. Here's David and Jonathan, and Jonathan says, I'm making a commitment to you no matter what happens. And that, our third point, is going to be tested when Jonathan goes to see his father. Well, what stops us from commitment in friendships? What stops us from getting more friends? I think, first of all, because we're very selfish. We think usually in terms of, how will this friendship benefit me? Have you ever thought that? Somebody wanted to be your friend, and you're like, this isn't really going to do anything for me, so no thanks. How many of you ever thought that before? Yeah. I'm the only one who's ever thought that. Okay, well, let's close in prayer, and you can all pray for me, right? Someone who, wanted to start relationship, or maybe you knew the only reason is that they want something from me, right? Like a surefire way to know that somebody doesn't really want to be your friend. If they say, hey, I want to talk to you. Let's have coffee sometime. I want to talk about a new business opportunity. Here comes the pyramid scheme, right? Because it's all about I've seen so many friendships destroyed because people all of a sudden take this friendship that's supposed to be for the mutual benefit to now it's going to turn into something where it's a benefit for me. And you think of friendship in terms of only utilitarianism, then that's going to fall apart. Now, is that to say that friendships aren't beneficial and useful? No, they absolutely are. And if you have a friendship where it's take, then that's really hard to maintain that friendship unless you have a really strong commitment. It's true. But understand that it also just can't be about what do I get out of this. A friendship is something that is beneficial for both. So we don't have a friendship because we're selfish. 2, we don't have a friendships because we usually fold pretty quickly when things get rough. Again, Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. All times. And very often you see friendships fall apart because of an event that happened. They needed you to choose sides and you chose the wrong one. Sometimes it's fair, sometimes it's not fair, but we fold really, really quickly. We have no grit in America anymore. We have no grit even as Christians sometimes to endure through hard times. You find out who your friends are when things are going really hard, and that's true. Who calls you when you're going through rough times? Who shows up with something that you need, or even to come and sit in silence? Everyone wants to be friends with the person who's up. It's really fun to be friends with the life of the party. It's fun to be friends with the person who, they're just an encouragement. Every time you talk to them, you're just going to get something good. And man, I'll call them all the time. Nobody wants to call the person that's down. I heard something happened to so-and-so. They're going through a real rough patch. I think I'll just give them their space. No, they need a friend. I know it's hard to go and talk to somebody who's really struggling, but that's when they need you the most. And yeah, they'll need you in 2 weeks and 3 weeks, but they'll probably ask, where were you during that real hard time, that real valley? And maybe you don't know what to say, but maybe you could learn. Maybe you could pray about it and the Holy Spirit could help you to say something. It doesn't have to be a lot. Sometimes we don't have the friendships because we decide it's just too much work. We don't want to put that work into it. Again, I think because we're selfish and somewhat lazy. We're also sometimes, we don't have friendships because we are afraid. We're afraid that if we open up to somebody, that there will be judgment instead of mercy. And I'm not saying that, again, I'm tired of quantifying myself. It's good just for us as friends to be so open that people can tell us things. That people can expect that even if they say things that they've done that are wrong, that they will get mercy and not judgment. Quantify, asterisk, but I'm not going to talk about those. I'm just saying it's really important for us to be people that someone else can depend on, that you can say, I want to show you my worst, and they say, that's okay. I'm still going to love you anyway, because it takes commitment. Proverbs 27:19 is as in water, face answereth to face, so the heart of man to man. It's good for your friends to see some flaws in you so that they can feel free to show you their flaws. And you can say, look at us. We're broken people. And that's why I love you, and that's why we're praying for you, right? What motivates you as a friend? What commitments do you make? I think what motivates us more than anything is what we find in verse 17, love. That we would assure others that it's going to be okay. Now think about this. Who are the heirs? So here's Saul. Who are the heirs to the throne? From his perspective, Jonathan. He's trying to preserve Jonathan's line. He wants Jonathan to be on that throne more than anything. And he's going to pressure Jonathan, take the throne. This is your throne. On the other side, from God's perspective, it's David. Now, The way that things went back in these times is if there were two people vying for the throne and one got it, he would kill the family of the other one. How did David know that Jonathan wasn't going to go and say, I know how to get rid of my rival. Dad, send a contingent of soldiers to this field and kill him, and we'll be done with this whole thing. How did David know that he wouldn't do that? He didn't know that. How did Jonathan know that when David became king, he wasn't going to say, as my first order of business, kill Jonathan and his children and everybody from Saul's household? He didn't know that. What was the deciding factor where they could make a commitment to one another? Love. It's important for us as Christians to be people of love. Paul talked about that this week, that by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples if you have love one to another. And part of that love means that we got to be able to talk to each other about really hard things sometimes as friends. I'm almost done. Let me just say one more thing. Friendship endures through risks. It's very easy to be friends with someone when there's nothing to test it. But Jonathan he can't just say, I promise I'll love you. I promise I'll take care of you. I promise that I won't tell Saul where you are. But now he's got to go and face his dad. And it gets pretty rough. Look at verse 25. Verse 24 says, so David hid himself in the field when the new moon was come, and the king sat him down to eat meat. And the king sat upon his seat as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought, something hath befallen him. He's not clean. Surely he's not clean. I don't know what's going on with that son of Jesse, but he's, I don't know, ceremonies. He touched a dead body, or he's got some kind of disease or something. It's fine. And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month, that David's place was empty again. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meat, neither yesterday nor today? Now here it is, right? Here's the test. This is what we were going to find out. David says, if my dad asks you where I am, tell him this, and we'll see what happens. So verse 28, Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem, and he said, let me go, I pray thee, for our family hath a sacrifice in the city, and my brother, he hath commanded me to be there. And now, if I have found favor in thine eyes, let me get away, I pray thee, and see my brethren. Therefore he cometh not unto the king's table. We can spend time unpacking this. Saul knew that David didn't go ask permission from him. He asked permission from Jonathan. He thinks that Jonathan is clueless, that Jonathan doesn't know what's really going on here. There's a hint maybe even that he thinks that Jonathan and David are conspiring together. Verse 30, Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said unto him, thou son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion, and unto the confusion of thy mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch him unto me, for he shall surely die. Wow. Saul insults Jonathan. Says, you're making the wrong choice. You're so stupid. You're rebellious. You're against me. You don't know what you're doing. Go get him. I know you know where he is. Go get him and bring him to me so I can kill him right here. Jonathan was not expecting this. I mean, it should have been a pretty innocuous answer, right? Just, oh yeah, he said he had a yearly sacrifice to go to. And Jonathan's expecting Saul to go, okay. And then all of a sudden, not just was he angry, but he turns on Jonathan. Verse number 32, Jonathan thinks that he can still reason with his dad like he did in chapter 19. And he says, wherefore shall he be slain? What hath he done? And Saul doesn't answer with words. Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him, whereby Jonathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David. So Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger. That word's only found 10 times in the Old Testament. And did eat no meat the second day of the month, for he was grieved with David, because his father had done him shame. It's tested. His friendship is tested. There's a moment where Jonathan realizes, oh, this is serious. Not just that my dad notices he's gone, not just that he wants to that he's angry, not just that he's angry and wants to kill him, but now he actually takes a javelin and throws it at Jonathan himself, willing to kill his own son. He's so angry. And Jonathan realizes, I have a decision to make. Now, what he could do is say, you're right, Dad, I've been wrong about this. I can see now your point. I will go get him and let's be done with this whole thing. How easy would that have been? David would have been a footnote. There was a young man named David who the Lord anointed, and Saul had him put to death. And yet, instead, we have this story of friendship that was tested, and Jonathan still goes back. Poor Jonathan, he has to go out, and he's wrong. His relationship with his dad is now strained, and he has to send his friend David away. Jonathan risked and spent everything for David here. But it's true that most tested things are stronger. But that's especially true of friendships. How many of you, raise your hand, have a friend that you weren't always friends with, that you were actually angry with and maybe an enemy? Yeah. Isn't it true that sometimes those friends are like the strongest friendships you have? I don't know why. I can't explain that all the way. I think it's easy to see a person at their best, but what about their worst? It's okay for friendships to be tested because testing makes them stronger. It's true when you break a bone and it heals, it's stronger in that place where it was broken and where it healed. And a friendship worth having will endure through trials. It's important for us to not have a short list of things that will make me not be friends with this person anymore. It should be it should of all these things that have to happen first before we're not friends. We should make it the point where we as Christians are forgiving and loving, and that where we want the best for so many people, that people can really consider us a friend that we can confide in. What strengthens a friendship? How can we have an enduring relationship? First of all, to be willing to take the risk first. Again, Americans are more isolated because we just don't want to take the risk of some kind of interaction with somebody. We have so many online fake friends, but it's hard to keep up the charade. And I think what people want is just someone that they can be real with, someone that they can be authentic with. I just want somebody that I can be myself with. I don't have to try to pretend. It's exhausting pretending to be kind and nice to everybody. And again, why don't you just find somebody who you can be kind to naturally so that you can love naturally? Like, I come to church, I'm not faking it. I love coming to church. I love the people that are coming here. When I'm out in the world, it's a little harder. I had a thing on Thursday night, and I had to pretend to be nice to the people that I just really disagree with. I wasn't being a hypocrite. I was just being very, very, very polite. And that's okay, but you can't be that with everybody. You have to take some risks. It endures through those risks. You have to be willing to be, again, criticized. Don't look to surround yourself with people that are only going to always agree with everything that you've said. If you have friends and you say, I think I'm doing this, and all you ever hear is, yep, that's a great idea, do it. And no one was ever like, what are you talking about? Why would you want to do that? Then, and again, I'm not saying that has to happen all the time. That's a pretty hard friendship to maintain. I'm just saying, like, someone who knows you and loves you well enough, they say, you know what, I think you're not really thinking this through all the way. I know you, and I know this isn't really what you want. We have, having friends means that we are open to when things aren't right. This is why accountabilities are so important. Accountability partners, to be able to say, hey, I need you to hold me to this standard. I need to be able to admit my faults to you and have you respond in care, knowing not just the action, but the person that's behind what's going on here. And then I think what strengthens a friendship is to be willing to lose that friendship, but you would be the last one standing, right? That you would not be the one to cancel a friendship. And it's so easy to do it. It's not that hard to find a flaw with someone and say, I guess we can't be friends anymore. I make it a rule, generally, that I won't do that. Again, not that I haven't had friends that have gone by the wayside just because we think so differently, but I've never called someone and said, we can't be friends anymore. I've had that happen to me. And I guess that happens, even as an adult. But I'm saying, I'm not going to be the one that does that because there might be somebody who really needs my friendship. People that have done me wrong, when I see them, I'm genuinely polite and kind to them as a friend. I have friends that I'm not friends with them anymore, but I remember that friendship fondly, and I would gladly rekindle it if I could. That's the kind of Christians that I think we need to be, especially when we talk about enduring. I think more than anything, when we endure those hard times in friendships, we are perfectly reflecting Christ. What did Jesus call Judas in the garden when Judas came up with that contingency? And Jesus knew what he was going to do because he was the Son of God and because he'd prophesied that it would happen. He saw Judas and he said, "Friend, why comest thou?" He let him kiss him. When they took him, and even people that had been kind to him, put him on the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I have tested my friendship with Christ over and over again, with my sin, with my attitude, with my actions, with my thoughts, with my words, and he has proved such a faithful and good friend. I want to reflect that friendship to others as well. I'm not Christ, but I have Christ in me, and he helps me do just that. Proverbs 18:24 says, "A man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother." I want to challenge you this morning to be that kind of friend, to look for those kinds of friends, to not isolate yourself further and further, but to commit to friendships, that Christian friendships, like what we see in the lives of David and Jonathan.